All right, everybody. Looks like we got a pretty good pool of the RSVPs in here, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to be mindful of everybody's times. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for attending today's Lunch and Learn Best Practices training. My name is Ben Decker, sales engineer at STCR. I'm joined by Jen Fraley-Custer, one of our support account managers who will be leading today's session on scale management maintenance. At STCR, we have been supporting the technology needs for grocers for 56 years now and believe that ongoing training is essential to meet the ROI target you have for a new POS system. That's why we've put together this monthly webinar series to help address and provide ongoing training on some key areas within the SMS solution. These will happen the last Thursday of every month and cover the topics within SMS that are common for our support center to receive questions on from grocers all over the country. Today, we will be going over scale maintenance within SMS, and Jen will take you through scale tables, scale maintenance best practices, useful utilities, and reports. We welcome and are happy to take any questions via the QA function along the way, and we'll answer them at the end of Jen's presentation. As TCR, we're dedicated to providing quality training and support to all of our customers and hope this serves as a great resource for you and your staff as a reference point moving forward. We want to empower you to take full advantage of SMS and all that it has to offer. Like always, today's session is being recorded and all these webinars will be available for viewing after the fact. In a moment, I will put up a brief QA prompt on your screen and appreciate your cooperation and participation today. And with that, let's begin. Jen, all yours.
Thank you, Ben, for that introduction. As Ben stated, we're going to be going over scale best practices for today. We are going to be talking about integrated scales. So just to clarify, this is going to be the scales that are in the back. So your deli scales, your produce scales, where you have the employees weighing the scales and tagging them. SMS has the ability to integrate and talk to those scales. These are not the register scales that you have at the front end. Those do get all the updates automatically already when we send price changes down to the registers. Before I jump into it, SMS can integrate with a variety of scale types, which will allow you to have a nice centralized location to be able to do all your price maintenance in one spot and be able to send it down to both your registers and your scales. If you don't already have integrated scales and it's something you're interested in, and you have some specific questions about brands, types that we support, go ahead and reach out to your sales representative and we can address that and talk to you about what we can do for you. But for now, I'm going to just jump into general best practices that you can use with your scale maintenance. So to start with, there's the scale setup. Get this question frequently on how do you know what items are going to send down to which scales. So the way that we do this is actually in the SMS Pro. You go into System, Terminal, you find the scale that you're looking for, and so I'm going to look at my 801 scale, and there is a wand at the top. It's called our Terminal Wizard. You can click on the Terminal Wizard and execute Device Wizard. And this right here tells you the list of subdepartments that are set to go to each scale. All scales are set up by subdepartments. Best practice, make sure that these numbers are in ascending order. It should always be smallest to biggest. So in my case right here, I have 24, 25, 999 separated by commas. If you're looking to add or take away a scale, there's some utilities that will help when you do add one or want to take them away to go ahead and send that change right to the scale and take everything that was already there off. We're going to go over that in a little bit. But just so you can see where you can easily add or subtract a scale to send down to each scale. This is a by scale setup, so if you need to set up to another one, I have 2 scales set up. That's where you would go. Going away from that, we're going to jump right into maintenance. The nice thing about having integrated scale is it's all in one solution, so you go to one spot to make your changes. On the screen, I have a basic item maintenance up here. Main item POS price table. If you're familiar with SMS, these are the main tables you are already using. When we start using scales, when we start integrating with scales, some very useful fields that you can look at before we get into the scale ones are the price table and the subdepartment. Subdepartment, making sure that the items are in the proper subdepartment so that they will send to the proper scale is something you can start doing and making sure that your item file is set up for right now. With the price, if you are not doing integrated scales currently and you want to move to integrated scales in the future, this is something you may want to start maintaining. As you are updating the prices and sending them down to the registers in the scale, you want to make sure you're sending the right price per pound. A lot of stores that are not integrated with scales will not maintain the price record properly because the price is embedded in the barcode. So that way the system will read the right price off the barcode so they don't have to worry about maintaining that in the SMS system. If it is something that you're looking to do to move to integrated scales, this is something to start maintaining because as soon as you integrate the scale, this price will be sending to both the scales and the registers. Just something to start looking for now if you are currently using the system and don't have integrated scales and you want to move to that in the future. Get to more scale specific information. There is some tables that we add on to the item maintenance when we integrate with scale. The first one is the scale info table. If you're looking to open this, it's underneath your item dropdown, scale info. The other one is your scale text. The scale text, that we'll get into what that is, this actually links to the scale info. So the way that this works is you have the items up on the screen, and then if it's something that's going to be sending down to the scale, you're going to have the scale info, and this links directly to the item. These fields are sending directly to the scales, and there are some very useful ones in here that can be utilized when you're pushing to the scales, and that's what we're going to go over. So I have up here, I have an item. I have my jumbo chicken cut wings, and I have on my I have my scale info table right here. The first field that we want to look at is the text link field. What this does is actually links the table to the scale ingredients table. So if I need to send ingredients for this item down to the register, I would link it right here to my scale text field. So right here, if you're looking to open this, it's under our auxiliary dropdown, and it's scale ingredients that will open up this window. I have that link formed, and now I can go ahead and put ingredients that I want to send down to the scale. This can also be utilized for other things. It doesn't have to be ingredients. It's any text information that you would like to send down. If you're looking to do country of origin, you can actually put that in here. If you're looking to put ingredients, you can obviously do ingredients. If you want to do special handling instructions, you can input whatever text you would like to have print on the tag at the scale. The nice thing about this is, depending on the label size and the label type that you're pushing the scales down to, that will actually format this window for you. So for example, I have this item linked to a subdepartment 301. So my scale text is in 301. So the scale that's programmed for 301 has a width of 54 characters and a max height of 5. So this will look like what it's going to print like on the label because that's what the label is formatted for. If I have a different subdepartment for a different size, it will look different. For example, I have another ingredient text that's actually for subdepartment 999. My width is 45 character and my height's 50. So when I'm typing in my ingredients, I will have a very good idea of what it will look like from the system down to the label. There's always a little formatting changes. Sometimes it does some scales do cut off words, but it will give you a very good general idea of what it will look like when it prints on the label at the scale. You can also adjust your font size on the ingredients in this table as well. Up here, you have the ability to adjust that. It depends on the scale brand that you're using, and it also depends on the label format you're using inside the scale on what font sizes are available. But you have that flexibility to go ahead and add that here. Going back to our scale info table, some more useful fields. You have the product life field. If you have to print an expiration date or best used by date on the label, this is where you can define how many days after the label is printed it should add on for the expiration date. So for example, if I print a tag today for this item at the scale, it will check and say, oh, it's got a 14-day product life. So it's the 30th, so that means on April 13th, this product expires. So we'll print that right on there, expire by or sell by. If it's a sell by date, April 13th. If I print this tag tomorrow, it'll say April 14th, and so forth. So instead of having to update the date, you can just come here and update how many days after the label is printed the item is good for. The next useful field is tare. There's a little bit of confusion with the tare because there is two different tares in the system. If we're looking at the scale info and we want to send down an amount that needs to be subtracted when the item is weighed at the deli scale, this is where we would input that on this tare field. If there's a certain container that's always being used, if you have a hot food case, for example, and you're selling chicken or potato wedges, something like that by the pound, and you need to subtract that container you're putting it in when you're weighing it at the scale in the deli, this is where you would put how much you need to subtract every time you weigh this specific item. This is not to be confused with the POS table, which also has a tare link. This up here is if the amount has to be subtracted at the point of sale at the register when they're weighing something. Subtract it here as well. But this way you have the choice. It can be subtracted when it's weighed at the deli, or you can have it set to subtract at the register. However, of course, you'd want to reweigh it at the register, so you want to flag it as scalable. But there is some confusion a lot of times with the two different tares. So this will just go ahead and automatically deduct 0.02 pounds every time I sell this item from the price per pound. Label format is another useful field that we get a lot of questions about. You have the ability to define a specific label format for each item. What that means is that scales have the ability to print multiple different label formats. Some of them have embedded a specific logo you may want to print. Some of them have embedded safe handling instructions. So if you want to define items to print specific label formats, this is where you would go ahead and point the item to that specific label format at the scale. These need to match the number of the label at the scale. We can also set the system so you only have to put in, if they have safe handling instructions, that's label format 2, and you only want to define those, the rest of them go to the default label. You don't have to put anything in here. So that way you only have to maintain if there's a specific special label that needs to be printed for certain items. And it can support up to however many labels are at the scale on here. There is a couple more fields. These are very specific, so I want to just highlight the more used and useful ones for this webinar. So I'm going to jump down here to description. If you're looking at the scale info table, by default, it is going to look a little smaller, so you will have to do the little box with the arrow to get more details to get this to pop up. But what the descriptions allow you to do is if you have a need to send down a different description to print on the label than what is showing on the front end, this is where you can do that. And you can define up to 4 lines of description. So for example, as I have my jumbo chicken up here, my description for the point of sale says jumbo chicken cut wing CVP 1 pound. I don't want that to print on my labels in the back because that could be confusing to customers. It's bringing down that 1 pound. They may think they're always buying 1 pound, and that's never going to happen. You're never going to usually have exactly 1 pound. So down here, I'm going to define a description I want to print on the label specifically. So I just cut that 1 pound out. I just said jumbo chicken cut wings. Done. Simple. Doesn't have a weight in there to confuse customers. And again, if there's any more details that you would like to add in here, you can go ahead and do that, description 2, 3, 4. Also the ability to change the font size on the description. So the description and the scale text or the ingredients over here, these are the 2 main things that print on the tag that have words that would really affect the font. So this is where you can define a different font size for the description as you can for the ingredients. Now, again, this is limited by some types of scales. Some types support a lot of different font sizes. Some are very limited on how many font sizes they support and what label format you're sending it to. But the flexibility is here. It just depends on what label type you're using and which scale types you're using. So this is really the maintenance part. I want to switch over now, as Ben stated. We're going to go over some utilities and reports that are available in the SMS system that many people are not familiar with when you start integrating with scales. Get to those, you're going to go under your maintenance tab. Under utilities, there's a section called scale. When you integrate with scales, this will become available to you. So at the top portion, there's 5 utilities that you can use to talk to your scales. And then there's 4 reports that are scale specific. So we're going to go through these. and discuss what each one of them does. The first one is send items to scale. So what this does is when you're making changes to an item and you deploy changes, it automatically goes down to your scales at the same time it goes down to your registers. But there may be a need to send down all the items again to the scale. That's what this utility is for. So going into this, you have the ability to send down item only, item ingredients, and NutriFacts down to the scale. The reason you may want to use something like this is what we went over at the beginning when I was talking about going into the scale, you can add a subdepartment. I just added a subdepartment. I don't want to go through and make a small change to every item in that subdepartment just to deploy it down. So instead, I can come in here. I can say I want to send item and ingredient. You can choose add or replace. So I'm going to add a subdepartment. You can also choose to create and load, which will actually wipe out the scale and reload the scale completely. It may be useful if you're replacing the scale or you need to take a scale from produce and turn it into a deli scale temporarily. So you want to do a clean and load to wipe out all the produce and input in all the deli items. Down here, you can then set your subdepartment range you would like to push down. Again, depending on what you're using this for, if you're just adding a subdepartment, you can just put that specific subdepartment number in here. Leaving it open-ended, it will send down all the subdepartments that are programmed for those scales in the terminal table. So it won't just send down all the subdepartments. It will just go, okay, it's open range, check the terminal, see, oh, it's got these 3 subdepartments. It'll send those 3 subdepartments as long as they fall in this range. And then down here is your target. Down here, you can come down and you can pick one specific scale, or you can pick both scales. There's always the DSC scales, as always includes all your scales, to go ahead and push the new subdepartment down to all the scales or whatever it is that you're looking to do. And then you just do launch and it will send them down. Depending on the size of the subdepartment, depending on what you're doing, if you're doing a whole range, it could take a few minutes because it compiles however many items are in subdepartments to send down. But then it will push it all down so that way you're not having to make changes, anything like that. The next utility is get items from scales. What this will do is bring up a list, and in this list you can pick which scale you would like to pull items from. It will create an external batch in your system of all the items and or ingredients and NutriFacts that are on that scale. So if I pick my 801 scale, hit go, there's item only, ingredient only, or nutrition only. And this will create an external batch in your system so you can compare what's in the SMS system versus what is in the scale. Sometimes people change prices at the scale. They may update a text ingredient at the scale, and this will give you a way to check and compare what's in the system. Just like with the font size, this does work better with certain brands. It does pull back certain information with brands of scales. So if you are experiencing an issue, you're doing item only and it's not pulling back all the item information, it may be a restriction on your brand. Ingredients only, it may pull them back in a different format. So just something to keep an eye out for when you're using this utility. But it is a good way to make sure your information is in sync. The next one is your pull report. This will just go out and reset your scales if you want to reset your scale. You can hit pull report, it'll say today, you hit go, and then you can go ahead and get a reading, or you can reset all your scales. There's no options on this to just do one or the other, so you will be setting a reset or you'll just do a quick pull. What the pull does is make sure that it can see the scale. I find the next one a little bit more useful, so I'm going to highlight that one a little bit better because it does what the pull report does, but it does a little bit more, and that's your status check. What the status check does is that it goes out and you can check one scale individually, or you can always check a group of scales. You hit go, and what it does is it checks to make sure that the scale's online. It does a quick ping to it, and it checks to see if there's any stuck files on the scales. If there's anything wrong, it will generate an urgent message. So if I did this on all my scales, I hit go, I go up to messages, I go to urgent messages. It's going to log an urgent message if it can't see one of those scales. So I have a communication issue because I have the scale set up, but I don't actually have them connected. So that way I can go and I can see that there is an issue with those scales, 801 and 802, I am not communicating with. So it's a quick and easy way to see if your system is being able to talk to your scales. Hopefully you don't see any urgent messages. I obviously see a lot because I have them set up, but I don't actually have physical scales. The last utility is send future item changes to scales. What this allows you to do is if you want to send some future changes, maybe I have a sale starting tomorrow and I want them to start pre-printing tags at the sale price. You can pick a date. So I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to pick tomorrow's date, hit go, and then pick a scale to send it down to, or all the scales. So that way they can start printing. So printing a sale price early. If you have an item that is usually $150 a pound, it's going to be on sale for $140 a pound. You can start having one scale print the tag so that way they have some items set in the back ready to go the next day. They can bring them out already with the new price. They were already weighed at 140 a pound, already tagged and priced at 140 a pound, so they don't have to sit there and do that first thing in the morning. That's what this would be helpful for. And again, you can just do one scale, so that way there's less confusion, or you can do a group of scales. The last section is the reports. So down here are some reports that are built into the system that are scale specific. There's 4 of them that we're going to go through. The first one is what's called the scale code report. While we're going through these scales reports, all of these options are very similar throughout the 4 of them. So I'm just going to go over them really once so you can see the options and just highlight any differences between them. But what this is going to allow us to do is all the codes that are scalable that are ready to go down scale. So you can pick a certain subdepartment if you want to narrow it to subdepartment. By default, it's going to it's open to all the items in the type 2 UPC. So it's open to all the items that will be set for scalable. Anything at the scales in the back are going to be type 2 UPCs where you can embed the price into the last 4 or 5 digits. So it's going to automatically put those in there, but you can narrow that range down if you would like. Target of PAL, pretty much default. You can order by UPC or description, and you can also limit it by not for sale, or both. So if you have items that are flagged not for sale you don't want to include, you can just do the ones that are for sale if you want to sell the not for sale, or you can just get both. So I'm just going to click both, hit launch. What this does is gives us a report separated by subdepartment on all the items that are ready to go. The reason they separate it by subdepartment is going back to what I said at the beginning. Everything is kind of triggered off of subdepartments. Your scales have certain subdepartments programmed into them, so that's why they did that this way. But this gives us an idea by subdepartment what items will start sending down to my scales, or which items already are sending to my scales. So I can see these are the 4 items in my meat department. I can see the price. I can see the weight. And then here's some of those that we just highlighted: your text link, your tear, your product life. So you can see what information you have ready to go or which information is being sent to the scale. And then as you flip through, you get how many in your deli department, how many in your processed food, and you can get all that information. It's an easy, quick snapshot of all the items that you'll be sending down. And you can sort this down and just look at 1 or 2 specific subdepartments. The next report is actually the ingredient report. What this does, as you can see, is very similar with the options. You sort it by subdepartment, order by UPC, not for sale. You can take that scale code range down. What this does is tells us all the items that have ingredients linked to it. Going back to our maintenance, it's how many items have a text link, and it's going to show us what is in that text link. I'm going to go ahead and hit launch. So here's my 1 item. It's always sorted by subdepartment that I have in my meat department with a text link, and here's what it's printing. The reason why they have this report is that there's a lot of states that require that you print ingredients. So this is an easy way to come through, check, see what items you have with a text link and what those ingredients are. The next report is the flip of this. What items do you have in your system that are set to be sent down to your scales that don't have a text link? Click on that same options. This one does not allow you to order by description, but everything else stays the same. We do launch, and it is the flip side of what we just looked at. So if you remember the first report, I had 4 meat items. The last report, I had 1 item with a valid ingredient ingredient link and it listed it off, and these are the 3 items without an ingredient link. So this will give you the ability, if you do need the ingredients to print, you can come in, run this report, and see what items don't have text links already and which items do, so you know what items that you can go through and quickly have to make ingredients for and start sending them down to your scale. The last report is the scale code count. This is got less options than the other. You can just see not for sale, for sale, and both. And what this does is just gives you a very quick overview of how many items you have to send down by subdepartment. So in each subdepartment, just the count, how many I have and how many have ingredients. So it's a very easy way to come and check how many items I have. If I want to go and add the processed food to my deli scales, I'm going to get 36 additional items and none of them have ingredients. Maybe that's correct. So that's fine, but this gives you a nice, easy way to check to see how many items you would be pushing down. If it's like maybe there's 1,000 items somehow in here, and you might want to go narrow it down or something. So that is what I wanted to go over in this presentation. Ben, do we have any questions?
Hey, Jen, great job. Awesome demonstration on all that scale management integration has with SMS. A couple of questions that came through here. The first one is that, so changes are going from the back office to the scales. If any changes are made at the scales themselves, are those also sent back to the SMS server?
So fortunately not. The way that this is set up, it's a one-way communication. So we are sending down prices and ingredients down to the scales. However, that's why they did build into these utilities that idea to get the items from the scale. So you can run this to get the items from the scale and pull back the information from the scale into a batch form and run a comparison between the two. If there's any differences, you could then use the send item to scale to mass send down all the items to the scale again to go ahead and get them back into sync as well. So you can utilize the utilities, but automatically there is no feedback coming up from the scales to the SMS system.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you. Hopefully that answers that question. If not, always follow up with more questions or reach out to us after this webinar. The other question we had here, Jen, was, can the SMS system interface with other scale management platforms like ePlum?
No. The way that the system works is that if you are going to be doing integrated scales, you would have it built right into SMS, so that way it's a one-stop. If you have ePlum, that's a separate machine, so you have to go to both machines to change the price. SMS won't talk to the ePlum machine automatically, so you would still have to maintain both. So the SMS system would be, you would want to bring it over to the SMS system to just have that one stop to go ahead and change the prices and push them down and ingredients.
Great. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Save time by making the change in one location. That's the whole, joy and benefit of having your scale maintenance integrated to the point of sale system. All right, well, those are the 2 questions that came through. Any other questions last minute, please feel free to type them into the QA section here. If there are no other questions, just want to thank everybody for the questions that you had today and for attending today's monthly Lunch and Learn Best Practices training. For any non-STCR customers in the call today, if you have more questions about SMS or STCR, please do not hesitate to send an email to myself as shown in the options here today, bend@stcr.com, so we can coordinate the appropriate follow-up. Another question here was, where do we find the recordings of these webinars? The recordings will be emailed out to all of the registrants, so that way you can review the link at any time. The sessions that have been recorded. In the coming weeks, we also hope to have a bank for you to go into with that specific URL and quickly review those within that address as well. But the link to all these recorded sessions will be emailed out, if not today, usually by middle of day tomorrow. Thank you for that question. So thank you again to our current customers. We appreciate and value your business. Looking forward to helping each and every one of you with your retail technology needs. Do not hesitate to email us or call our 24/7 help desk so we can assist you properly with questions around scale management and anything else within the SMS system. As just mentioned, this webinar will be available after today's session. We will send that out to everyone that attended. And so that way you can review it as well as other members of your staff at your store. Our next session will be on April 27th. We'll be covering best practices for buying and receiving with an SMS. We hope to see you all there. Thank you again, and please enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.